I am a little bit late in delivering this Dresden video to you. I'm very sorry about that. I have been unwell and it has slowed me down significantly, but Dresden waits for no one. So I finished Ghost Story and it was a very, I think, necessary change of pace. This is a book that is extremely introspective and I think needed to be in the wake of changes and everything that happened there. Butcher doesn't really let us escape from the consequences of the decisions that were made in that book, and he doesn't let Harry escape from them either. So this was a very introspective book, and because of that, because of how the book presented itself, I'm going to attempt to respond to it in a similar manner. So this will be a more introspective kind of video, a little bit less of a standard review and more just trying to respond to what the book was doing. So I personally loved that Butcher made the choice to go so introspective on this book, that he made the choice to slow down significantly, still plenty of action, still plenty of humor and nonsense, but also a lot of time to just kind of sit with characters and see how the world was altered based off of desperate decisions made in desperate times. And I think a lot of times it's really easy to make those desperate decisions, to do the things that you said you always wouldn't do, to be backed into a corner and have to make those hard decisions, and then you get the results and you have to keep moving. And this series didn't let us keep moving because Harry's dead and because it affected a lot more than I think Harry realized. One thing that I really love about this series, and that I loved so much about Changes, is that Butcher doesn't allow Harry or me, the reader, to take the easy way out in pretty much anything. One thing that really stood out to me was when Harry was going to accept the role of the Winter Knight, which was something that he had been denying, something that he had been rejecting, something that he had been saying, I'm not going to do it. He doesn't want to sacrifice his humanity. He doesn't want to sacrifice his soul. He doesn't want to sacrifice. He sacrifices so much for so many people, but he can't sacrifice that. No matter how much temptation comes from the coin with Lashiel, or from this position of power, or from being able to actually be a wizard that's accomplished and that can make money and have rapport with other people, he constantly is choosing the more lowly action for the sake of doing what he believes is right. And in Changes, he was forced to make decisions that he didn't believe was right in order to save his daughter. Like, he made the choice. He sacrificed the things that he had been fighting to maintain to save his daughter. And sorry, I'm tangenting. My point is, in the scene with the Winter Knight, the old Winter Knight who had been tortured, who was suffering, who was terrible. It was a horrible scene. And Harry saw him, and his task by Mab was to kill the old, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, the old Winter Knight. And my mind, I just leapt to, oh, kill her. It's a mercy. Look at how tortured he is. He'll continue to be tortured if you don't kill him. So this is actually, you're doing him a kindness and saving your daughter. And I was already justifying it, but Butcher didn't let me do that. He didn't let me take the easy way out, because Harry doesn't let himself take the easy way out. And Harry was like, I want to pretend that this is a mercy, but it's not. I'm doing it as a bid for power. The toll it's going to take, the chip it's going to knock off of my soul stays the same, because I'm not doing this as a mercy. I'm doing this for me. And I'm doing this, to gain power to save someone else, but still it's for him ultimately. And so I'm not allowed to justify things that are unjustifiable. I'm not allowed to make light of difficult situations that Harry is put in, because Harry doesn't allow himself that out either. And the same happened in this book in really surprising and, I thought, fantastic ways. For instance, when I found out that Harry was a shade, and I expected that he had died. I knew that it was likely that he was dead, and I also knew that it was likely that he was coming back at the end of this book. So I was already prepared for all of that. When the book started, and it turns out that he's a shade, he is dead. He's dead, as far as we know at the beginning of the book, and he now has to solve his own murder. Like, of course he does. Even in death, he still is put to work. Like, you gotta solve your own murder before we can move forward. Sorry, figure out who killed you. It's so funny. Anyway, my first reaction was, this is kind of a best case scenario, because you just took that deal with Mab, you've made all these sacrifices, you've compromised your character, you've compromised your morals and your beliefs, and put yourself in a position where you could do a lot of harm to the world under Mab's control. So, I mean, this kind of works out for you to be dead now, because now you can't do that thing, and now Mab doesn't have a winter night, and sure, she'll get another one, but it's not you, and you're powerful, so that's kind of cool. But the book doesn't let me have that out, and the book doesn't let Harry have that out, because it turns out that Harry was kind of the balancing of a lot of things, and now with him gone, it creates this power vacuum that is actually detrimental to a lot of people. Not only that, but Harry had the same idea I did. We find out later on, at the end of the book, that it was Harry orchestrated this. It was Harry's plan. And the thing is that I thought of this too. Like, that was how I began the book, thinking, oh, kind of best case scenario, actually. But actually, and that's what Harry thought too. But actually, once again, his actions have consequences. You don't get the easy way out. You don't get to just take the easy route and not have to deal with it all. Because in order to orchestrate this, he put Molly in such a horrible position. I mean, it undid her. She was dealing with such severe PTSD in the way she kept up with herself anymore. I think she wasn't showering anymore, and she's dressed in rags, and she's talking to herself, delivering her own kind of justice as like a vigilante. Like, she's gone in a direction so far south from what Harry ever would have wanted from her, and what she ever would have chosen had she still been under Harry's care. And it's because of his decisions that he's left her here, not only because he put her in this position to have to be the one to participate in all of this and remove his memories. And again, it made sense to me as his plan was being laid out. I was like, yep, totally, that's the most logical thing. But it affected, like, it had dire consequences on her. One line that really struck me, I thought was really good, was with when we see Harry's godmother is training Molly, and it's not cute, it's not pretty, doesn't look good, but she challenges Harry, and it's a beautiful scene. I mean, like, powerful scene. But child, it was never your responsibility to care for the young woman. This is when Harry is telling her, you gotta take care of her, you gotta feed her, you gotta care for her well-being too. You can't just train her in, like, how to be more powerful. And she says, but child, it was never your responsibility to care for the young woman. Yes, it was, he said. She was my apprentice. Indeed, someone who you had pledged to teach, not care for. Child, did you miss the entire point of the exercise? I opened my mouth and then closed it again. Maybe I did. What was supposed to happen? You were supposed to teach her to care for herself, Leah replied in a matter-of-fact tone. Your failure to do so, she frowned. I confess that I have only a limited understanding of the concepts of good and evil. The differences seem largely semantic to me when applied to empiric situations. Yet, it seems to me that you did her no kindness by being gentle. And that's exactly the situation that we're in. Harry cared for Molly and taught her in certain ways, but he's faced with the reality that what he failed to teach her is how to survive without him. She became reliant on him. I mean, he was her rescuer. He is the reason she's still alive today, and he was her defender. And now here she is, left alone, but not only left alone, left with such PTSD for what she had to do, and she's crumbled. And that's on Harry. He has to hold that. I'm just going to get out of this deal that I made. Like, I made the deal, and it was a terrible choice, but it was what he has considered, and I understand the choice, what he has considered to be necessary and to be something that he has accepted, and he's like, and I do it again. Yeah, it's the choice I made. It had horrible consequences. It was terrible, but it was necessary. That's his perspective, and I get it. And then his response is, so then I'll just get out of it. I'll just not be here anymore, and then now the consequences aren't there. But it's not so simple, because now that there's this power vacuum, now you've left all these people behind to mourn you and to have to pick up the pieces and pick up the slack. And also it didn't work. Because the book ends with him in Mab's arms and he's not actually dead. And, oh, yikes. Anyway, we'll get to that. It just seems like around every corner, my natural inclination, because I love Harry and I'm on his side, my natural inclination is to try to work. I'm working alongside him, and alongside him, Butcher is saying, no, I'm not going to give you the easy out. Something that I thought was also really cool was, at first I wasn't into Fitz, especially because that conversation that Harry and Murphy had together, again, was a really good one. When Harry was trying to defend Fitz, trying to get him out of the situation that he's in, and Murphy's like, he killed an innocent. Like, my neighbor, I think it was an elderly neighbor, is dead now because of him. And there could be more. Like, this is one of potentially many. We can't just get him out of the situation and call it good. And, you know, Harry, he did much the same thing with Molly. Molly ruined a man's mind and probably life. And she was in this situation because the system failed her. But regardless, she is responsible for the things she did. She has to deal with the consequences. Yet, she didn't really have to deal with the consequences in a physical manner, because Harry stepped in and kind of picked up the slack and said, I'm taking responsibility for her, right? She still had to deal with the mental consequences of it, but, you know, it was something that I felt a little bit mixed about, because, like, you know, justice should still be served for the victim. And then we're in the similar situation with Fitz, where he's killed someone, potentially multiple someones, and Harry nobly believes in rehabilitation, but what about justice for the victim? And Murphy is on that side of things, where she's like, it's not so easy, it's not so simple. It was an accident is unconvincing. They knew what could happen. Their intentions are irrelevant. I know, I said, but these aren't bad kids. They're just scared. It drove them to a bad place. You've just described most of the gang members in town, Harry. So again, it's just this really complicated situation, and Harry, you know, now that he's in this position of being a shade, he sees the situation from the perspective of wanting to help Fitz, which he maybe wouldn't have had previously. So he sees it from another angle. But Murphy does have a point. What's the right solution here? I'm not sure, but it is a complicated issue, and we have to address that. But I think Harry probably sees a lot of himself in the kid as well. You know, we got some really great flashbacks with Harry in this book, where we got to see his relationship with Justin. We got to see flashbacks with him and Elaine, He Who Walks Behind. Many characters in this book were deepened as we saw them reeling in the aftermath of what happened in Changes. And I think Harry too was deepened in getting to see more of his history and what kind of shaped him up to this point, as well as him having to grapple with the consequences of the decisions that he's made. But Harry, much like Fitz, was untrained and under the influence of a bad man. And Harry, I think, possibly sees himself in Fitz, and that he could have been in a very similar situation to Fitz if someone hadn't stepped in for him, trained him. And I think that there's a piece of him, I think that he couldn't have seen that had he not gone through this bit as a ghost. And I wonder how much of that is going to come back and become relevant in later books. But I think there's also parallels between Harry and Fitz too, in that look at how many people have been affected and hurt because of Harry, because of the choices Harry made, because of the choices Harry made in a desperate situation. Fitz, as Harry put it, is hold on, pull up that quote again. He's not a bad kid, he's just scared, and it drove him to a bad choice. And Harry too, not a bad man, but he did, in his own words, in this book, he reflected on, I did all this to save my daughter. but how many other people's daughters did I kill in the process? I think you and I would say Harry is not a bad man, but his choices in a desperate situation, in a scared and desperate situation, did cause a whole lot of harm, and that doesn't go without repercussions. So I also wonder how much Harry sees himself and Fitz in that way, and that's maybe why he's advocating for the kids so hard. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like way out of line with all this. I also think it's just very clear that Harry has a soft spot for kids, and he saw Molly, a kid who was desperate because the system had failed her and she didn't have anyone helping her, and now she was going to be killed for it because she did terrible things and ruined someone's life, ruined multiple someone's lives, destroyed a guy's mind. But Harry saw the situation and not just the actions, and he wanted to step in and try to help her have a better future and have better actions in the future with that mentorship. And I think he's trying to extend that same offer to Fitz as well, another kid that he sees as just needing someone to advocate for him, which I think is noble. It is interesting, too, that all of this was influenced by a lie, by a fallen angel whispering in Harry's ear to convince him. Before I talk about the ending of the book, I also want to mention a couple of other characters that I thought played key and important and awesome roles in this book. Butters. I'm loving the character arc that I'm seeing in Butters. He is such a squishy character. I just love him. He's so sweet, and he is, I don't know, innocent. Is that the word I want? He's a cinnamon roll, and I love him dearly. But also, he's standing up for himself in this book, and he's actually pushing himself outside of his comfort zone, which he did in Changes as well, and he's done in other books too, in Deadbeat as well. Like he's forced out of his comfort zone a lot in these books. But I just feel like I'm seeing him, like, he talked back to Harry. He pushed back on him. He went for it. So I'm loving to see his progress in these books. Marcone is such an interesting character. I think I almost expected him, you know, when we talk about the power vacuum that's created by Harry destroying the Red Court, I'm just like, okay, so Marcone is going to step in and just like take over, right? Because that makes sense. But no, it's almost like he views his organized crime, his criminal enterprise, as essentially another kind of justice, like a justice outside of the government. Like, he's trying to create an order in his own way. And like, you're still not a good guy, but you sure are interesting. Mort is back in this book, and not only is he actually properly, like, he's doing the job now, you know, he's not, as I remember him before, he was essentially like a con man, like he was lying, but now he's doing the job, and he's doing it well enough. But the role he played, I thought that he, from the beginning with his interactions with Harry, and then him having to go and talk to Murphy on Harry's behalf and be Harry's intermediary, was really funny, and I enjoyed his role. I enjoyed his character a lot. He even had some really tender moments. There was one at the end of the book where he was shielding Molly while she was crying, kind of trying to like protect her privacy in that really painful and vulnerable moment, which I thought was so tender and sweet. Naturally, there were also a bunch of really great action sequences as well, with the corpse taker, and oh my goodness, the scene entering Molly's mind. I think the battle that we watched take place inside of Molly's head was one of the best scenes. It was probably the best scene of the book. But anyway, the end of the book was, once again, just such a shock. Like, it again sent me reeling, because here I am. I've just learned who done it. It was Harry. He called in a favor, and golly. So then I have recontextualized basically everything in this book after that reveal, and then we have this beautiful sequence where he just wants to know that everybody's going to be okay. He just wants to know that everything's going to work out. He sees that Molly is in the care of the Carpenters, which could not be more fitting, and Mouse is watching over her and protecting her, which again could not be more fitting. Obviously, it's sad that Mouse and Harry aren't together anymore, but if Harry's gonna move on to the afterlife, him then taking care of Harry's daughter for him, I wouldn't have thought of it, but it's the perfect. It made perfect sense. He sees that Molly and Mort will defeat the corpse taker, that everybody's going to be fine. Everything is going to be okay. And so Harry is okay with just peacefully passing on. And it honestly was kind of a beautiful ending. And I, for a second, just kind of lost myself as far as looking into the future and thinking, well, that can't happen, because I was just kind of caught up in how beautiful that conclusion was. And as he's ready to pass on, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm with you. Again, Harry. It seems like every choice he makes, I'm just like, yeah, makes sense. I'm right there alongside of you. I have no objections. And then we wake up in Mab's arms. So anyway, apparently death isn't so black and white. It's quite gray. And he was still kind of sort of alive. So here we are in her arms, mine, still under her power. Oh, she's gonna have her white knight. We are not getting out so easily. And oh my goodness, honestly, I felt so run through. Like, by the end of this book, I was wrung out. And so I don't know that I would have just woken up in her arms and just been like, nope, time to bargain. I'm fighting. But Harry did. Harry was like, no, you don't get to control me. I'll be your servant. I'll be your slave. If you're going to make me a slave, I'll be it. And I will be as mediocre as they come. And I'm going to be such a disappointment unless you play by my rules. What a good ending. And I don't know what to expect. What do you mean? What is that going to look like? Like, what is Harry? I mean, I know he's going to find a way to work through this impossible situation and still keep who he is, right? Like, he's still going to fight to do what's best in the most impossible situations. I don't know how or what that's going to look like, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. So I realized that there were probably a lot of things that I kind of skimmed over. But again, this is a very introspective book, so I kind of wanted to respond to it in a more introspective way. I hope you didn't mind. But I am looking forward to the next book next month. So please do chat with me more in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the book, and I'll see you again, next month, then Tuesday, whenever.